Again, as we said earlier today, we have the opportunity for questions or comments. Who has the first question or comment? Yes.
What about people like the Peace Corps and different, GAP has a thing that's called Red, where a bunch of bands get together and they all give money to the poor or whatever. People that don't do it religiously, is that any good, or what do we think about that?
Do they get any points for that? No and no and no. First of all, we don't know what happens to the money. I don't trust what happens to the money, first of all. As I look around the world, it seems like the money that's supposed to go to the poor somehow seems to wind up in the hands of the strong men who run things. And the poor just, did anybody notice that? Take Haiti, for example. Haiti's a good example. Yeah, Haiti, we just keep on throwing money at Haiti. And they seem just as bad off as ever down there. I remember as a kid, when I was, I remember where I was sitting in the, if you go on south on 82, just north of Route 23 in Elverson, there's a little tiny chapel there. That's where I used to go as a kid. We lived about a half mile from there, and used to walk to, sometimes my dad would let us walk. My mother hated it, but even today, when I think of when I wear a white shirt, I think of walking to church, because there was a mulberry tree on the way to church, and my mom could not keep us away from those mulberries. And you can't eat them without, if you see mulberry juice, it is a deep, nasty green stain. And my poor mother, in her white shirts, show up in church with a mulberry stain, so we couldn't stay away from it. Anyway, I can't remember if we ever really got in trouble for that. I just can't remember. In any case, I still remember going to that church, and I remember one particular speaker one day talking about Haiti. I was extremely young. And what struck me was that this speaker said that Haiti is so poor, not even the communists want Haiti. Now, wow. I can sort of believe that, because the communists are pretty much parasites. They don't go where there's poor people, they go where there's wealthy people. Is Haiti that much, after all the money that's been poured into Haiti, is it any different at all? Now, a lot of it has been done by Christian ministries, it's true. But most of the time, the Christian ministries, as far as I can tell, want to go down and do it for them. And I believe in Christian missions. This could be a little bit of a mouthful here. But I believe in Christian missions, we've literally taken the world's way of doing it. And we said, you know what, if we have some money and we throw it at the problem, good things are going to happen. And we've seen nothing but, frankly, bad things happen. Quite frankly, we've just taken money and throwing it around. And yes, without Christ, your money is going to do more harm than good. And we see it, we see that again and again and again. Yes?
To speak to that a bit, I used to work at a daycare, and we would get a lot of state monies. And most of it was given because we would subsidize children who needed daycare and the parents didn't pay. 9 times out of 10, the money would go to bonuses for the people who worked there, and it wouldn't really help the families or the children. And the other thing is that if we just give money to people, like to buy food or whatever, to fix their house, we're not really fixing their heart. So they go back to the sin that they started. Like, I think as Proverbs says, like a dog to his vomit. They just keep going back and back and back to the sin. So like maybe you give money to a family to subsidize daycare or whatever, and maybe the dad's not providing for his family and the mom's trying to do it all by herself. Well, you keep giving her money to help with her kids, but it doesn't help with the problem that the family is broken. It doesn't address the heart issues. So if we're just giving money to help people physically, and we're not helping them spiritually, and we're not giving them the gospel and the true remedy for sin, then we're not helping anybody.
No, we may be hurting them. In fact, we are hurting them often enough. I still remember years ago when I was a youth pastor at a church, we came across a family, 4 children living in the car. Well, we didn't want to give them money, but we we thought, wow, they're really in desperate shape. The father was a complete disaster. And so we said, and this is just to demonstrate how hard it really is to be charitable. And it's a difficult thing, and it can't be done outside of Christ, not consistently. And so we said as a church, well, when I can give money, we'll buy him some groceries. It's good, right? Should work. You know what happened? The dad got a hold of groceries and sold them for his habit. Hey, godless help is never help. I mean, it just isn't. Yes, Seth.
And I think a little more directly to that as well is, it's not just a question of, if we do something good or charitable, does that not earn any points? The question is, can unrighteous people do good works? Can you even do anything, even in Jesus' name? What do you do with Matthew 7? You got people saying, well, we did this in Jesus' name, and Jesus saying, no, you didn't. No, you did not.
And call them workers of iniquity.
So I think the scriptures are just clear. You cannot, apart from the Spirit of Christ, you cannot do good works, and you cannot do anything. I mean, I look at my own life. Before I was truly converted, I did a lot of charitable things, but it always, if I traced it back to the heart, had some vein of selfish motive to it. You felt good about doing it. You felt good about helping somebody. You felt good about recognition. It just took the guilt of not doing anything off of you. I mean, trace it back, and that's where it will come apart from the Spirit of Christ, I think. So.
Yeah, there's a lot that could be said about that. Go ahead, John, before I take off on that. We don't need me to anyway. Go ahead.
The question then is, what does charity look like? What does mission look like? That's Christian. That's in the name of Christ. What does a good mission look like, or a good charity look like?
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. What is godly charitable giving? What's it look like? Well, first of all, and you see, intriguing that Hebrews 2 says, bringing many sons to glory. And it's very difficult to read the Bible and not get the family connection. God is a father. The Bible just speaks of God in familial terms all throughout the Scriptures, bringing many sons to glory. Now, that tells us that it's going to be very hard to explain God without utilizing his institution, the family. And first of all, charity must be modeled, first of all. Which is the last thing many of these folks don't want to do. That's the last thing they want to do. They don't want to model it. They want to model it to a degree, but they don't want to get in there in the mud with the people they're trying to help. We saw from Psalm 22 that Jesus Christ came down where we were. He lived among us. That's what Hebrews is all about. Let me give you a quick example about that. A quick example. My brother spent some time in Africa, and he spent some time, and I might have mentioned this before, forgive me if I have. The name Joseph Kony mean anything to you? The Lord's Army? Joseph Kony, a vile, wicked man, not sure if he's even alive. His whole mode of operation, was to kidnap 8, 9, 10-year-old boys, give them a machine gun, turn them into hardened criminals by the time they were 12. Murderers. That's what he did. That was his MO. Well, my brother spent some time in that area when he went to Africa, and he talked about these NGOs that were there to help the people. Now, don't question governmental NGOs. They're not governmental, they're non-governmental organizations. All kinds of organizations that were there to do good, to help people. He said an interesting thing was going on because he went in the capital where they were. It was Kampala, where they were. And he said the first thing that happened was all the poor people left the area. And here's all these do-gooders, Christless do-gooders, coming in to help, and the first thing that happens is all the poor people leave. By the way, no one was paying any attention to that. Now, why do you think that was? Simple answer. Here's what was happening. All the NGOs came in with their Western money, and they took up all the hotels, and they bought everything, and the prices went way up for everything, right? This isn't hard to imagine. To the point where the poor people that lived there couldn't afford it anymore, and they left. Godless compassion in action. So first of all, it has to be modeled. It has to be shown even as Christ did. And secondly, it has to be demanded. Godly compassion demands responsible action by those who can act. It demands it. Sounds a little rough, doesn't it? But it's not compassion to give people money and then go to the dad and say, well, hey, you can go ahead and keep spending on drugs. No! You start acting like a dad. We demand it. Another example. Forgive me if I've given this one before. But while my brother was in Africa, he was at a meeting where a man named Moses stood up and was talking. It was an amazing story. And this guy Moses, my brother said, was quite an unusual guy. He said he worked like crazy, loved Christ, was doing everything he could to promote the gospel, and he was a hard worker. One day, while my brother was at the meeting, a man came up on stage when Moses was speaking. Did I share this before? Moses was speaking, and this man just came up on stage, and in front of everybody, he hugged Moses, and he said, "This man is my father." It wasn't his physical father, but my brother, what's he doing? This guy just come up on stage, what's going on? And this man got a hold of the mic, and he said this. He said, he said, at one time, I was not a believer, I didn't know Christ. And I went up to Moses because I knew he had some money, and I asked Moses for some money. Now, what do you think Moses did? Good Christian. Us good Western Christians, we'd reach into our pockets and give him some money now, wouldn't we? And feel good about our compassionate and charitable nature. You know what Moses did? And this man said it. He said, Moses took me, he says he threw me away from physically. And he said, you are a lazy bum. You are a disgrace to your family. You are a disgrace to the gospel. Get to work and earn some money. That was the message that man needed. You know what he did? He got to work. And he began to support his family. And you know why he was calling Moses his father? You know what he did? Because dads tell their kids what they need to hear, not what they want to hear, what they need to hear. That's what dads do. Right, dads? If you do not tell your children what they need to hear, you ain't much of a dad. You're a junior high friend. Kids probably don't need any more of those. Maybe they do. That's compassion. Right there. Demanding responsibility, which as far as I can tell, the godless charitable organizations that I've seen never demand it. That I've seen. Great questions. You never know where this question time is going to go. Is there another question? Yes, Jeff.
What do you think of team missions trips? Do you think they're advancing the kingdom of God?
Team missions trips. You know, yeah, right. There's a softball comfortable. Spend too much time on it. Jeff, of course, being my son, already knows what I think. We just
Tell him what he needs to hear.
we live in these funny times when all you have to do is put missions onto anything and it works. You know, the money comes in. It's a mission. Here comes the money. I'll just say this very quickly. I've been asking for years who these team missions trips benefit. Do they benefit the people on the other end? I don't know. Does it benefit the people going? if you like tourism, I guess it does. I've heard some of these teen mission trips advertised, and it seems like they never ever talk about them without pointing out that, oh, by the way, we're gonna take a day or two and we're gonna go on this sightseeing trip. And that seems to be the real benefit. I'll tell you what, the next time I see a teen mission trip that looks like one of Paul's missionary trips, or even close, I'll become a believer again. I'll become a supporter. But I haven't seen too many teen mission trips that look like what Paul had to deal with. I have a friend in South Africa, Peter Hammond, who runs a mission called Frontline Fellowship. And they do missions trips for 1,000 miles in their four-wheeler over mud, and it's horrible. I've seen some photos, and it just looks like nothing but mud and bugs and cable jacks hooked up to a tree to try to get the four-wheeler through the next muddy riverbed, and bandits he requires all of his missionaries to carry. You know, maybe if we could get maybe towards that mission trip department, maybe I could sign on again. But as my own kids know, without saying too much about whatever you believe about teen mission trips, maybe there's some good ones out there. You kids know, right? I've never encouraged you, right, to go on teen mission trips. I've always actually discouraged you because I thought it was doing more harm than good. Anybody want to challenge that one?
Joel,
Yes.
this is different than what you were talking about. That at some point, a couple years ago, on Christian radio, I heard a statistic that teens who have gone on a mission trip are not leaving the church at the same rate that teens who have not. So 50 or 60% of the over 18 are leaving the church. Of teens who have gone on a missions trip, it drops to 20%.
What do we do with that?
What do you do with
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just think about it, you know, right now, standing here on my feet, thinking of what it takes to raise a godly generation, what the scriptures teach, you know, speaking of when you're sitting in your house, when you're lying down, when you're rising up, and all the things that it takes to bring the next generation up in the admonition of the Lord, sending them on a teen mission trip in the scriptures is not named among them. So I would have to question those numbers. It sounds like somebody, and there's money in teen mission trips, a lot of money. It sounds like somebody's trying to preserve their piece of the pie to me. I know. I've seen some of the some of the Facebook quotes from some older people that my children have ministered at camp with, for example. Now, camp isn't a teen mission trip. Being a counselor at camp is sort of, you know, similar, right? And boy, where some of these kids have gone after counseling kids in their Christian walk, I was like, man, I wouldn't want my kids to be under their counselorship. Ain't no way. Where they are now, wow. Anyway, I'd seriously question that. Seriously. I mean, that's a pretty good thing. All you gotta do is keep your kid in the face on a mission trip. That was easy. No teaching the scriptures. Off on a mission trip with you. You're gonna be a happy family for years to come. Doubtful. Yes. Come on.
I would question, what churches are we talking about? What is staying in the faith? Like, it depends.
Yeah, there's that, too.
Are they
Yeah.
continuing with regular church membership? Are these Methodist churches? Are they Baptist churches? Are they Catholic churches? We don't know. Like, it's a very, very broad statistic that could cover a lot of different scenarios that may or may not be staying in the faith per se.
Right. Yeah, and that's true. What kind of worries me differently from that? It's very worrisome that the numbers keep saying 70-80% are leaving. What's more worrisome is the lack of concern in the church. 78% is leaving. It's like, I guess that happens. Wow. And I mean, the siren should be going off. We should be hearing the fire trucks in the street, bells clanging. Something's way wrong. Instead, we get a. I guess that's what happens when you're a Christian church. 78% of kids leave. Anybody here with children happy with that number? You know, 70 to 80% of your children leave the faith. Wow. Wow. You know, somehow, when Christ gains that reward in Psalm 22, I don't think he's happy with 70 to 80% leaving the faith. I don't think that's very motivational at that point.